In the next module, we're going to be going in depth with creating content. So today, we're going to talk about what equipment we actually need to make videos. And let's start by answering the question of how much does production quality actually matter? Well, anyone who says it doesn't matter at all is lying. People are much less likely to watch an educational video with terrible audio that's hard to hear or the camera being really shaky and blurry because good quality production signals I've put the effort in, and we immediately trust that the same care has been taken with the information. Even though the production quality and information quality have no actual correlation, people are more likely to trust someone who has a reasonably well-made video. However, you definitely hit a point of diminishing returns with equipment quality. Once you're at a relatively good level, which can be achieved fairly cheaply and quickly, like we're going to talk about, after that point, upgrading equipment gives your videos a very slight edge, but that's it. Spending 10 times more on equipment definitely does not give you 10 times the quality level. And for YouTube, people don't need insane movie-like production value anyway. The more natural setup can sometimes feel more genuine and authentic. After all, people are watching your videos because of the value you can bring to them and because they like you and your message and your stories and so on. They're not watching because you have a fancy camera lens. So, we do need to get the fundamentals right with equipment, but there's absolutely no need to spend loads of time and money on equipment. In fact, we'll begin by talking about two of the most crucial equipment lessons that I had to learn the hard way that can allow you to reach a very good level of production quality, but without spending much money at all. The first of those is that the lighting is actually more important than the camera. And the second thing is that the recording environment is actually more important than the microphone. And I say this because most people's immediate thought is, oh no, have I got to go and buy a really expensive camera and microphone? But the answer is no, not at all. Before splashing lots of money on fancy cameras and microphones, realize that you can still achieve quite professional quality by instead focusing more on the lighting and the recording environment first. And a couple of other inexpensive things we're going to cover in this training as well. Honestly though, those two tips alone are so invaluable. But let's fully break down all the equipment options and things to consider when creating videos. And whilst we're going through this training, I think it's important to remember there is no right or wrong when it comes to which specific model or which specific brand of equipment to get. I can give you some equipment suggestions because I've spent a ridiculous amount of time researching and testing this stuff, so you don't have to. But there are loads of different equipment options which could still achieve good results. So, for example, if you already have recording equipment, the chances are that'll do the job just fine for now. So if you've got a nice camera or microphone, don't go and switch to the ones just because I've said them. Use what you have. Or a nice option as well is to look in the description of YouTubers whose videos you like the look of, because almost all YouTubers will list the gear that they themselves use. And that tip is really useful because if you can find someone whose videos look how you want yours to look, or whose videos sound like you want yours to sound, you can just get the same equipment as them and try and replicate the same sort of results. Having said that, don't forget that point I said initially, that the lighting is more important than the camera and the recording environment is more important than the microphone. Bear that in mind before you buy a camera and microphone, because the reason their videos might look and sound good might be down to those two things more than the actual equipment. But that is a good starting point. However, if you don't have any equipment already and you don't have any specific YouTuber style that you want to emulate, I'm going to give you some personal recommendations from me. And for each area of equipment, I'll give you a couple of different options because it's obviously no one size fits all here. It comes down to a mixture of your budget and the type of content you actually want to make, as different equipment is going to suit different styles of videos. But let's begin with the camera. The easiest option is actually 100% free, and it's probably in your pocket. Yep, your smartphone. These days, smartphone cameras are actually pretty great. So this is a perfect free option to get started. And if you don't currently have a smartphone for some reason, you can surely borrow one from your friends or family whilst you're filming. So everyone can use this option. In good lighting, a smartphone camera can still produce videos that feel quite professional and will more than do the job. If you really don't want to use a smartphone for some reason, you could get a point-and-shoot camera for between $100 and $200. But honestly, I don't think the quality is hugely different, assuming that you have a fairly recent smartphone at least. So I think smartphone is actually a great option to go for. But if you'll be traveling a lot and moving around when filming, a GoPro may be something that you want to consider. Even older, cheaper versions of GoPros, even a used version if you want, they'll still do the job. Or instead, just look for anything that's compact, robust, and lightweight. Those are the main things you're going to be looking for there. In fact, a lot of vloggers use something called the Canon G7X Mark III, as it's nice and lightweight, but it's got a really great picture and autofocus. So that's a bit more expensive, but it's another option to consider at least. However, if you really want the highest level of quality and versatility possible, then you're probably going to want to consider a DSLR or a mirrorless camera. And one of the most popular cameras of all with YouTubers, and the one I use myself, is a Canon 70D or 80D. And they're basically the same thing, just one's a more recent version. You could use either. It's a popular choice though because it does have a lot of flexibility if you're willing to learn how to use it properly and you want to get more creative with your videos. It also has a flip screen so you can see yourself whilst filming to check it's recording properly and everything's in frame right. However, a DSLR is normally overkill just for filming a regular video. So please don't think you need something like this at all, especially not when first starting out. That said, as you scale your channel and business, this is a way of getting that little extra edge of quality and professionalism, as it is a great camera. But there you go. You put a few different options there as a starting point. But if you see something that's on a special offer that looks good and it's got good reviews, there's no right or wrong here, like we said. And I still think that a smartphone would more than do the job to start with. But now let's talk about a tripod, because no matter what camera you have, shaky footage will not look good. So there is the free option, I suppose, which is putting the camera on a pile of books or something and propping it up securely, making sure it's at a steady level. A lot of people do have to start off like this, but honestly, tripods aren't that expensive. So if you have a nice camera, I would not risk this option unless it's absolutely necessary. So instead, I would look at buying a tripod. And on Amazon, or your preferred site, you can get tripods for either your smartphone or for your camera, depending on what model you're using. Whilst you don't need incredibly expensive tripods or something really high end, you do kind of get what you pay for with the super basic and cheap tripods. I tried one myself initially and it was pretty flimsy and it broke quickly. So I think paying a little extra for a sturdy and adjustable tripod is almost certainly worth the money in the long run, because if you're going to be moving the tripod around a lot as well, you don't want to risk having your camera on something that could break potentially. And on the PDF version of this training, at the very end of it, I'm going to include a list of Amazon links to all the equipment I myself use. And the tripod that I've listed there has served me very well. Up until now, at least, I've had it well over a year now. So that could be a very sturdy option. But any tripod that's not the very, very cheap, flimsy, basic one will probably do the job. But I do think getting a tripod is definitely worth it. Now, though, let's move on to the lighting. And the free and best option is natural light. Filming outside or by a window with bright natural light will look great with no cost and no setup. It tends to make you look a little better as well, which is nice. The other lighting options are really for when natural light isn't available, because obviously with natural light, it's kind of time sensitive. So what are some other options if you can't use natural light? Well, you could go for LED lights. You can get these pretty cheap, and they actually provide quite a nice atmosphere, I think, to your videos, which is why you'll see a lot of YouTubers using them. Another option is to get a ring light. If you're going to be sat or stood in one specific spot whilst you're filming, a ring light is an effective way to get a lot of light in a specific spot. And you can typically control the light intensity too, so you can get something that suits you best. You may get some little ring circles in your eyes when you're filming, but it's not a big deal. You'll see this on other YouTubers' videos, but that can definitely be a good option. Something slightly more advanced that maybe takes a little bit more setup, but is potentially worthwhile depending on what you're trying to achieve, is a softbox lighting kit. And if you have the budget and the space and you want to light a larger area like a full room, this will allow you to get very good lighting because a softbox just softens the light from the bulb so it's not as harsh when pointed directly at you, so it can achieve quite a nice effect that feels relatively professional. All of these lighting options work. So it really comes down to picking what suits you and your content best. But please don't overlook the lighting. And whichever option you go for, spend a bit of time to figure out the right positioning, as it will make you and your videos look so much better and more professional. Okay, now let's get on to sound and your microphone. And a really great option here is something called a lav mic, which is also known as a lavalier mic or a lapel mic. Lots of names for it. But either way, it's a small hands-free microphone that can clip onto your clothing. And this is ideal in most situations because you can move around with it and keep it at a steady sound level. But it also allows you to have the microphone pretty close to your mouth, which is always better. We want our microphone close to the audio source, which is us. So you can get a pretty decent lav mic very cheaply. Just for like $20 you'll find them. But just check the reviews first and see what deals are on because they all kind of do the same thing essentially. Obviously the more expensive ones probably will be a little bit better sound quality, but even the cheaper ones can get a much nicer sound than just using the inbuilt microphone on your camera. That said, one limitation of the cheap lav microphones is you then have to plug the other end of it into your phone and sync up the audio with your video footage once you filmed it. I mean, this isn't an issue because it can be done automatically in a lot of editing software. Or if you manually have to do it, you can just clap loudly at the start of your video and you'll easily be able to sync up the lav mic audio with your camera audio. But I'm just saying this to make you aware that with the cheap lav mics, you'll probably be plugging the other end into the headphone jack on your phone and you'll get an audio MP3 file on there, which you can then sync up with your video file. However, my favorite option when it comes to lavalier microphones is to get a wireless microphone system, something like the Rode Link Filmmaker Kit, which is what I myself use at the moment. And basically, rather than plugging the lav mic into your phone and syncing it up later, instead, the lav mic is attached to a little pack that you clip onto yourself, which connects to a receiver that's plugged into your camera. So it wirelessly transmits what's being recorded in the microphone that's close to you straight into the camera. And the upshot is that the audio and video will all be in one file, no syncing required. So it's a bit more of an upfront investment, but in my opinion, it's probably worth it. Another option you could go for, though, if you're not keen on the lav mics that you clipped yourself, is a shotgun mic. And this is a microphone you can attach to the top of your camera, which is really useful if you're vlogging and you want better audio than your inbuilt microphone in the camera provides. Just make sure you use a wind muff if you're filming outside. Another option for microphone is a Blue Yeti or Blue Snowball. And perhaps these are the most popular microphones on YouTube. And that's because they're USB microphones that simply plug into your computer and away you go. And they're a particularly good choice for voiceover. I mean, all these other mics I just mentioned, they could do voiceover as well, of course, but these ones do seem great for that. And if you wanted to go even higher quality for voiceover, just search condenser microphones and you'll get some really great options. But honestly, I think the Blue Yeti in particular is a very solid choice for filming any kind of voiceover for your videos, or even for filming with the camera on you if you wanted, if you have the Blue Yeti pretty close to you. I know YouTubers with hundreds of thousands of subscribers who still use this, so it would more than do the job. But now let's get to an important sound tip, which is that good sound quality is generally considered more important than good video quality because it's hard to listen if the audio sucks. But remember, the recording environment is going to have the biggest impact on whether the sound quality sounds good or not. So the starting point should always be picking the right location to record, ideally somewhere with as little background noise and echo as possible. Rooms with lots of furniture and carpet to absorb the sound are typically better. So get that right first, because even a really great microphone in terrible recording conditions is not going to sound good. Whereas a cheap microphone in good recording conditions will sound pretty decent. Now, if you find that even after, trying to get the room right, it's still just not really sounding great, you can purchase something like acoustic foam tiles, which can help. Just search sound treatment and you'll get loads of ideas on things you can do to make the recording environment sound better. Or as a do-it-yourself version of that, you could just hang some clothes or sheets around the recording area, which will absorb the sound, and it really will help make it sound better. So that's audio. The final thing we need to talk about is your background. And I think this is one of the most underrated ways to improve your video quality. And that is to just pay more attention to what's behind you. The background and the environment you film in massively contributes to the atmosphere of your video. And if you just have a messy bedroom behind you, it'll look nowhere near as professional. The thing is, people make snap decisions and snap judgments. And so, as weird as this may sound, someone is more likely to trust you as a credible source of information if you have a professional background. Something very simple can work, even a plain color wall. Or alternatively, you can create a background that you film all your videos in front of, like a set for your videos. It's having that consistency for each video is actually really useful. And someone that I think does this very well and illustrates this point is Graham Stephan. He still uses a relatively simple background. It's him at his desk, but it's quite interesting and well put together with the things around him. He's clearly put some thought into it. And you obviously don't want to make it too cluttered, but you could just add some useful items or pictures around you that are relevant to your niche. And suddenly you've got this kind of set for your videos that people are going to become familiar with, and that's going to look much more professional and like you've actually put some thought into it, because you have. A great alternative, though, is to use a green screen, as then you can literally put anything behind you. And I used to think, you'd need a huge budget to use a green screen, like it was something just used in the movies and TV shows. But that's not the case at all. You can get a roll-down green screen or a pop-up green screen that folds away, both relatively cheaply. You can then just film in front of the green screen, and when you edit the video, you'll be able to put any picture or video behind you, giving you a lot of creative options. So this is quite a fun choice to go for. But if you do go this route, you'll need to make sure that you get the lighting right so there's no shadows on the green screen or it won't work properly. And also make sure you don't wear any green clothing while you're filming. But whatever you do, whether you have a green screen, whether you design it yourself, whether you just get a simple wall behind you, whatever it is, just put a little thought into what's behind you and what's actually in the camera frame and what isn't. Okay, so although that's a lot of information, hopefully that's pointing you in the right directions at least. And of course, you've got the PDF version of this where you can go in and see each section, see the different recommendations. But I'm just going to give you two final things here. I'm going to firstly give you a basic starter setup, and then I'm also going to give you what I'm actually using myself at the moment. But let's start with this basic starter setup for a very small budget, which I actually think is a great starting place. Although when we hear, starter setup, we think, it's probably not very good. I actually think you can get some pretty great results with this. And that would be using your smartphone camera, buying a smartphone tripod that will fit your specific phone, using natural light, so ideally positioning yourself close to a window and filming in the day, buying a microphone because the quality of your smartphone, the camera that you'll be filming that with, it's okay, but it's not great unless you're very close. So I think this is an area that's definitely worth buying an inexpensive external microphone. I can't really give you a specific one because it depends on the type of video you want, but refer back to that previous section and buy a relatively inexpensive microphone and make sure you're in a room that's relatively, furnished or in an area that's not got lots of noises and echo. And then finally, just get a simple backdrop that you make yourself using relevant items you already have. That setup right there should give you good results, but without spending much at all. And of course, later on, you can level things up a little bit using the money you make from the channel. I just don't think you need to rush in with the highest quality things right away. The only other thing that I would perhaps add that we haven't mentioned is you could get an external hard drive to save a backup of all your videos and files. Unless, of course, you have a huge storage space on your computer or laptop. Now, you probably won't need this right away when you're first just making those initial videos, but after you've made a few videos, you probably will need somewhere to save them. So either look into getting an external hard drive, something portable that you can take around with you if you go abroad or anything, and you still want to make videos, you can always have it with you, access to all your stuff. Or alternatively, you can just use cloud storage like Dropbox or Google Drive. That'll give you some free space when you register initially. So that's a good option as well. But the point is, it's nice to have a backup of the files that you are going to be using regularly. Like if there's certain clips that, like an intro to your video that you're going to be using all the time, or you just want to save a backup of all the videos you've made in case something happens to them. Yeah, I think it's worth having a central place to store all those files, because otherwise it gets confusing having things scattered everywhere. Final thing though, the final part of this training is I just want to give you some links to the actual things that I myself am using at the moment. I did a lot of research on equipment, obviously, and so I'm quite confident in recommending all of these things. They've served me well. I just want to stress again, they're obviously not necessarily these are for a bigger budget when you're ready to level up. But I've put in the PDF below the Amazon links to the core equipment that I myself use and that I like. So if you want to go in and have a look at those and potentially later on upgrade to these, or maybe even right now if you've got the budget for it, go straight ahead with them, feel free to do that as well. You've got the option. But that concludes our training on equipment. Once you've gone ahead and bought the necessary things that you need, we're going to be ready to start creating some awesome videos and start growing your YouTube channel, growing your YouTube business. And I'm very excited for us to do that. I will see you in the very final part of this module, which is going to be just giving you some to-do list items, some next actions to actually go and implement. So, because obviously so far you've just been listening and consuming. Now we need to go and put this into practice. And there'll also be a little quiz as well, just to test that you've got the key things out of this module. But yeah, after that, we're going to be getting into module 2, and I will see you there.